In early May, a single operation in a West African country sent shockwaves across the globe. The world's media turned their attention to Burkina Faso after President Ibrahim Traoré ordered a surprise raid on the headquarters of Mineral X, the French company operating the country's largest gold mine. What began as a simple audit turned into a political earthquake. Behind a hidden wall in a sleek glass and steel office building, investigators discovered a massive safe, unmarked in official blueprints, known only to a select few. Inside, thousands of documents would expose decades of exploitation, corruption, and environmental abuse tied to one of the most lucrative mining operations in Africa. Burkina Faso, a nation rich in natural resources but long plagued by poverty, had just opened a Pandora's box. The contents of that safe would go far beyond local mismanagement. The documents detailed a vast network of hidden deals, illicit mineral exports, and secret intelligence cooperation that implicated not only French interests but also Western intelligence services and multinational corporations. It wasn't just a corporate scandal, it was evidence of a modern colonial framework, engineered to siphon wealth out of the continent while leaving communities devastated. For years, people living near the mines had complained of poisoned water, collapsing tunnels, and vanishing land. Now, they had proof. For decades, citizens wondered why so much gold left their soil while their schools, hospitals, and farms remained broken. Now, they had an answer. And for the first time, the balance of power seemed to shift. The documents had done what protests, petitions, and investigations could not. They revealed the system in its raw, undeniable truth. But what exactly was in the safe? How did Mineral X manage to operate unchecked for 50 years? And could this moment mark the beginning of a new era not only for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa? The operation began quietly in the early hours of May 10, before dawn broke over the capital city of Ouagadougou. President Ibrahim Traoré had assembled a special task force composed of his Presidential Security Unit and the Economic Crimes Division. Their target, the headquarters of Mineral X, located on one of the city's most prestigious business avenues. The building, a sleek modern tower of glass and steel, had long symbolized foreign investment and industrial power. What no one knew was that it also hid one of the most explosive secrets in West Africa. Security forces quickly sealed off the perimeter while investigators stormed the building. Eyewitnesses later reported that several Mineral X executives attempted to flee the premises, carrying briefcases filled with documents. They were intercepted at the exits and their materials confiscated. Inside the general manager's office, hidden behind what appeared to be an ordinary wall, was a concealed compartment containing a massive Swiss-made safe weighing nearly 2 tons. It did not appear in any architectural plans, and it later emerged that structural modifications had been made during construction to accommodate it. Clearly, this was no ordinary corporate installation. The safe itself required a team of security experts and digital forensic specialists to crack open. When they finally breached it, what they found surpassed even the highest-level suspicions. Stacks of physical files, hard drives, encrypted USB devices, and binders labeled with handwritten notes filled every inch. Some documents were in French, others in coded symbols later identified as part of an internal Mineral X shorthand system. The safe, in essence, held the company's true history, one that never appeared in public reports or financial statements. Within hours, a special presidential commission was convened to examine the materials. President Traoré addressed the nation later that evening, declaring that the raid had uncovered evidence of systematic looting, corruption, and deception carried out under the guise of international partnership. The shock quickly spread beyond Burkina Faso's borders. International news outlets scrambled to confirm the story. Analysts speculated, if one company could hide this much for 5 decades, what else had gone unnoticed across the continent? What began as a bold move by a new leader had now turned into a geopolitical reckoning. As investigators sifted through the documents retrieved from the massive hidden safe, a picture of deep-rooted and deliberate exploitation began to emerge. One of the most damning discoveries was a set of double accounting records. These files revealed that Mineral X had been underreporting its actual gold production by approximately 40% for decades. The unreported gold, worth an estimated $8.7 billion in today's market, was smuggled out of Burkina Faso through unregistered channels and delivered directly to French vaults. This sum represents more than half of the nation's entire annual GDP. But the financial deception was just the beginning. Another batch of documents contained detailed lists of consulting fees paid to high-ranking officials, both political and military, across multiple administrations. These payments, in reality, were bribes meant to secure privileges such as bypassing environmental regulations, tax exemptions, and uninterrupted access to restricted zones. Particularly explosive was the discovery that the family of a former president was on the payroll. The public outrage that followed this revelation sent shockwaves through the country, as citizens saw written proof of long-suspected corruption. Among the most heartbreaking findings were confidential scientific reports, commissioned and authored by the company itself, detailing severe environmental degradation caused by their operations. These reports had been hidden from the public and the government. According to the data, cancer rates in villages surrounding the mines had risen to 12 times the national average. Cyanide and heavy metals had leached into groundwater supplies, rendering nearby agricultural land barren and contaminating the primary water source for thousands of people. These toxic legacies were never addressed in public. Instead, Mineral X had launched minor public relations efforts, small donations to clinics, token support for local schools, under the guise of corporate social responsibility. Internally, however, correspondence between executives revealed that these gestures were merely designed to distract from the mounting health crisis. In effect, the company knew the cost of its operations and chose to prioritize profit over human life. Even more disturbing were the documents relating to safety protocols. Internal emails and memos showed that several mine collapses, publicly described as unfortunate accidents, were actually the result of deliberate cost-cutting decisions. Over the past 15 years, 347 miners had lost their lives due to structural failures that could have been prevented with basic safety measures. Yet in a cold, calculated decision, Mineral X had opted not to invest in protections, having concluded that paying compensation to victims' families was cheaper than enforcing proper safety regulations. By the time the Special Commission completed its first review, it became clear that this wasn't a case of corporate negligence, it was a well-oiled machine of exploitation. The company had not merely mined Burkina Faso's gold. It had systematically drained the country's wealth, poisoned its land, endangered its people, and corrupted its institutions. President Traore would later describe these documents as proof that our poverty was manufactured by design. For many Burkinabe, this wasn't just evidence. It was vindication. As investigators dug deeper into the safe's contents, they uncovered an even more alarming layer of the scandal, one that extended beyond economic theft into the realm of political manipulation and international espionage. Mineral X had not only exploited Burkina Faso's natural resources, it had actively sought to influence and reshape the country's political and social landscape to suit foreign interests. Internal correspondence revealed that the company had built a covert network of local journalists, influencers, and civil society leaders who were either paid to promote pro-company narratives or silenced if they refused to comply. These documents outlined a blacklist of individuals deemed unfriendly to Mineral X, activists, investigative reporters, and outspoken community leaders. Many had been subjected to intimidation, surveillance, and even physical threats. 2 environmental activists, who were mysteriously murdered over the last decade, were found to have been under watch by Mineral X's private security division. Further documents linked the company to French intelligence services. One memo described coordination meetings between Mineral X executives and operatives from France's external intelligence agency. The meetings focused on smuggling uranium and rare earth elements, discovered incidentally during gold extraction, out of the country without the government's knowledge. These strategic minerals, vital for military and high-tech industries, were treated as national secrets and smuggled under the cover of routine gold shipments. Even more surprising were records of intelligence cooperation with agencies outside France. Reports detailed joint initiatives with American and British intelligence, particularly in mapping high-value mineral reserves throughout West Africa. The goal, as stated in one strategic briefing, was to contain Chinese expansion in the region by controlling critical mineral supply lines. In return for this intelligence sharing, Mineral X received technological support, satellite imagery, and diplomatic cover for its activities. This web of covert dealings confirmed what many African leaders had long suspected but could never prove, that multinational corporations were not acting alone. They were embedded in a larger structure of neo-colonial control, supported by foreign governments intent on preserving their strategic influence in Africa. The implications were staggering. Mineral X was not simply a greedy company, it was a political actor in its own right, one that had shaped laws, silenced critics, and manipulated sovereign policies under the protection of powerful foreign allies. For Burkina Faso, this was not just a betrayal of trust, it was a revelation of occupation by stealth. The revelations from the Mineral X documents sent tremors far beyond the borders of Burkina Faso. President Ibrahim Traoré responded swiftly and decisively. Within days of the safe's discovery, he announced a complete suspension of operations for all foreign mining companies in the country, pending a full investigation. More importantly, his administration unveiled a radical new policy. All future mining operations in Burkina Faso would be operated as joint ventures between the state and foreign investors, with the government holding a minimum 55% ownership stake. Transparency would be non-negotiable. Every ounce of mineral extracted, every dollar earned, would be logged and reported through an independent oversight body. Additionally, Traoré introduced the creation of a social development fund, financed by mining revenues, to invest in local infrastructure, education, and healthcare in mining regions. For the people of Burkina Faso, this wasn't just policy change, it was justice finally arriving. International reactions were swift. The French government issued a carefully worded statement expressing concern and a need for document verification, but behind closed doors, officials were reportedly panicking. The uranium smuggling and intelligence ties, if proven, could severely tarnish France's international reputation and spark a wave of legal and diplomatic consequences. Meanwhile, Mineral X's public relations team scrambled to contain the fallout. The company denied the authenticity of the documents, but its stock price told a different story. Within 48 hours, Mineral X shares lost 43% of their value on the Paris Stock Exchange. French banks and political elites with ties to the company suffered immediate financial blows. The shockwave spread across markets. Investors began dumping shares in other Western mining companies operating across Africa, fearing similar revelations. Burkina Faso's neighbors, Mali, Niger, Guinea, announced reviews of their own mining contracts and issued statements of solidarity with President Traoré. In Mali, the Minister of Mines declared, "The era of blind contracts is over. We are watching. We are next." Civil society across the continent mobilized. Within weeks, West Africa witnessed one of its largest coordinated public movements in recent history. Demonstrations calling for resource justice were held simultaneously in 25 countries. From Dakar to Kinshasa, protesters carried signs with Traoré's face, calling him a symbol of African dignity. The movement culminated in the formation of a Pan-African coalition, the Coalition to Reclaim Africa's Resources. Their mission was simple yet powerful: monitor mining activity across the continent and advocate for local ownership, transparency, and sustainability. The African Union convened an emergency summit. There, Traore delivered a fiery address: "There is no independence without economic independence. Africa's wealth must serve Africans." His words echoed across the continent, with several African leaders pledging to adopt similar reforms. For perhaps the first time since the colonial era, Africa's mineral wealth was being openly discussed as a matter of continental sovereignty, not just commerce. Burkina Faso, a country once seen as peripheral on the global stage, had become the epicenter of a resource revolution. The documents in Mineral X's safe had done more than expose a company, they had ignited a continental awakening. The safe inside Mineral X's headquarters did more than expose corporate corruption, it unsealed the hidden architecture of modern neocolonialism. For decades, Burkina Faso's people had lived with questions: why were they poor while their land was rich? Why did so many die in mine collapses while foreign executives grew wealthy? Why did sickness follow the gold? Now, they had answers, documented, undeniable, and devastating. What began as a bold presidential raid has turned into a continental turning point. President Ibrahim Traoré not only disrupted one of the most powerful mining operations in Africa, he challenged a global system that had long thrived in silence. His reforms, and the bravery to expose the truth, inspired millions across the continent. No longer was the conversation just about one company. It became about power, ownership, dignity, and the future of Africa itself. The scandal also shattered illusions. It reminded the world that exploitation doesn't always arrive with chains and guns, it can come in the form of contracts, consultants, and foreign aid. Mineral X was not alone. Similar networks, similar systems, may be buried beneath other glass towers and boardrooms across Africa. But now, the ground beneath those towers has begun to shake. This moment is not the end of a story, but the beginning of a movement. The people of Burkina Faso, once poisoned and ignored, are now empowered and awakened. Their gold, their land, their lives, finally recognized as theirs. To the rest of the world, this is a call to witness, to amplify, and to support. Africa is not poor. Africa has been pillaged. But the era of silence is ending. True independence begins when the truth is known, and acted upon. For generations, we have watched our lands produce riches that the world cannot live without: gold, diamonds, uranium, cobalt, yet our villages remain untouched by the wealth that lies beneath our feet. Our people walk miles for clean water, our children study in crumbling classrooms, and our hospitals lack even the most basic supplies. All while cargo planes carry tons of our minerals overseas, day after day, year after year. The revelations from the Mineral X scandal were not a surprise to many of us, they were a confirmation. A confirmation of whispers passed between families, of questions asked in quiet tones: where does all the gold go? Why do the mines bring sickness, not schools? Who profits from our pain? For decades, the answers were hidden. Now, they have been dragged into the light. When President Ibrahim Traoré revealed the contents of that hidden safe, we felt something we hadn't felt in a long time: validation. Our suffering had not been imagined. The exploitation was not paranoia. It was real, it was documented, and it had names, figures, strategies. Mineral X had not only stolen our resources, it had stolen our voices. In the villages near the mines, old mothers wept. They had buried sons who died in mine collapses, told they were accidents. Now they know the truth, that safety was sacrificed for profit. Fathers clenched fists, remembering poisoned fields and sick livestock, all while being told they were lucky to have a mine in their backyard. Children, who had never seen a real book in their schools, learned that billions of dollars in gold had been smuggled away while their futures were stolen before they began. Across the continent, a fire was lit. In Ghana, in Mali, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, people gathered in markets, schools, and homes to talk about the documents. It was not just about Burkina Faso, it was about us all. Every African country rich in minerals suddenly looked at its contracts, its foreign partners, and asked, what are they hiding? We felt angry, but also empowered. For the first time, the betrayal had a face, a name, a number. It was no longer abstract. And because of that, we were no longer powerless. We stood up. We marched. We shouted in the streets, not in desperation, but in defiance. This is our land. These are our resources. The age of quiet suffering must end. President Traore became more than a leader, he became a symbol. A young African president who chose his people over foreign pressure. Who refused to be silent. Who showed the world that our dignity is not for sale. In him, we saw what is possible. We saw that truth, once revealed, cannot be ignored. And we began to ask, what if every African leader did the same? What if every hidden safe was opened? What if our resources built roads in our villages, not weapons in foreign wars? What if we no longer accepted scraps from our own riches? The Mineral X documents did more than expose corruption, they revealed a path forward. A path of sovereignty, transparency, and justice. A path where Africa's future is not dictated from Paris or London, but written in Accra, Bamako, Kinshasa, and Ouagadougou. As ordinary people, we may not own companies or sit in boardrooms, but we know injustice when we see it. And we know that change does not come from silence. Today, we remember the miners who died for profit. The activists who were silenced. The journalists who risked everything to tell the truth. And we say, never again. We may have been exploited in the past, but we are awake now. And we will not go back to sleep.